This is a very important topic, and I think it would be negligent of us to not discuss it, especially considering recent events that have taken place in the GTA. I'm sure many of you have keeping up with the news. You've heard about the recent incident that took place on Danforth, where some people were harmed, and of course this is a tremendous loss to our city and to the community here. And the family of the apparent shooter, I'm speaking, as the information that's been given to me, came out and said that their son was dealing with severe mental health issues. And he was failed by virtually every system that was put in place to help someone like him. Every safety net that was supposed to be there to ensure someone like him got the help they needed, unfortunately, was removed from him. And so again, our community now is at a crossroads. Many of us are talking about this more openly and trying to think about these issues more critically. I myself actually completed a series on YouTube. I don't know how many of you saw it, through Glad Tidings Network. It's another media project that I run. We interviewed people who had dealt with mental health issues. We talked to mental health practitioners to try and shed more light on this particular topic. And alhamdulillah, we have a group of shuyukh and scholars and experts in this field that are going to lend us some of their expertise to this topic in particular today, inshallah. So firstly, I want to open the floor and ask Shaykh Navaid Aziz, who's also speaking in the Canadian context, give us your thoughts on the recent tragedy, the many people who were harmed, and especially the news in light of that their child or the potential suspect in the crime did suffer from mental health issue. How do we as Canadians, how do we as Muslims digest information like that?
When you look at such stories, subhanAllah, they are very tragic, and there are a lot of lessons that can be learned. And I think that's the focus of tonight is, what are the lessons that can be learned so that history does not repeat itself? The first thing we want to look at is that you can see that this family was struggling, and even the individual themselves was picked up twice by the Mental Health Act, by the police themselves. So clearly, even the police was not able to do something at that time. But this is not to take away anything from the police, it's more to focus on society itself. That there are going to be people that are struggling at all ages of life. Children as young as 6 years old are now developing anxiety disorders. Think to yourselves, what does a 6-year-old need to do in order to develop an anxiety disorder? What is happening in their life that this is happening to them? This shows us that life is just getting more hectic as it is. But our solution to that is creating more awareness about these issues. Clearly, within the Muslim community in particular, and in society in general, mental health is still a taboo topic. In fact, even the very language we use is not appropriate often. How easily we use the word crazy, or how easily we use the word retarded, or how easily we use other synonyms similar to those that are not appropriate at all. And these words stigmatize. They do create a stigma for those people that actually are suffering with mental illnesses. Number two, a lesson that can be learned is, why is it that as a community we're always reactive? It's a natural reaction to be reactive to something, but someone commits suicide, okay, let's start talking about suicide. Someone has, shooting related to mental health, let's start talking about mental health. That is a natural reaction to have, don't get me wrong. But what I'm saying is we should be more proactive as well. We should be discussing these topics well in advance, and we should be making sure that people are trained at all levels, starting from parents to teachers to imams to increasing counselor services within our masajid, so that anyone that needs help easily knows where to get it. And that's why, alhamdulillah, it's such an honor and privilege to be a part of tonight's panel, because we're trying to be a part of that solution. And the third and last thing that I'll share over here is the importance of recognizing the pain of the family. SubhanAllah, this family has gone through so much hardship, from losing a daughter to having another, child that was in a coma and was involved in criminal activity, to having this happen to their family. This shows, subhanAllah, that there are some serious issues happening in our community that need to be addressed. And what I loved about Brother Ammar's talk, the way he ended, be that hand that helps people. We have enough people to judge, enough people to criticize. We don't have enough of those hands. And so regardless of whatever our issues are on an individual level, we need to develop that mindset. What can I do to help pick someone up? And if we each took that responsibility of helping one person per day, we could make a huge difference in everyone's lives. I know our times are very limited, but those are just 3 of the lessons I wanted to share from this incident. Wallahu a'lam.
Jazakallah khair, Shaykh. Thank you very much. We also have on our panel Dr. Noor, who is a member of the Muslim Medical Association of Canada. Thank you very much for being here. Doctor, we wanted to ask you, of course, there are sometimes varying symptoms for various mental health conditions. For example, something like depression. Some people may not truly know if they are depressed or if their family member is depressed. They may just be dealing with a level or a period of sadness in their lives, or they may be dealing with, maybe a time when they don't feel the same way. How does somebody actually know? What are some of the signs or indicators if somebody's actually dealing with a real mental health issue or crisis versus perhaps just, maybe in a state of sadness?
Assalamu alaikum. Thanks for having me here. That's a really good question. It's not an easy one to answer. Otherwise, you could just Google your diagnosis, which I think pretty much everyone does nowadays anyways. Essentially, you would need to meet with a licensed and qualified medical health professional who would need to take a complete and thorough history, physical examination, and then use our diagnostic criteria to come up with a diagnosis if there indeed is one. But a short answer, which we commonly use as a principle, is that if there is a set of symptoms that affect your ability to function on a day-to-day basis, that usually qualifies it as being a mental illness. So if you're finding that you're experiencing something that's affecting your ability to function on a day-to-day basis, in other words, get out of bed, perform your daily duties, show up to work, have meaningful relationships and interactions, these are all impaired, it's usually a sign that you would fulfill the diagnostic criteria for a mental illness.
Okay, thank you very much. Jazakallah khair. Shaykh Yasir Qadhi, it's an honor to have you here in Canada, alhamdulillah. Question for you. Is there a relationship between Iman and mental health? Some people will blanketly say that, you can't be a believer if you're depressed. You can't be a person who truly loves Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala if you're in a state of depression. Can you comment on that notion?
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillah wa salatu wa salam ala rasulillah wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa walaha ma ba'd. Jazakallah khair. That question is actually a little bit painful for me personally because, and I take full responsibility for my own mistakes, it was a common theme amongst many religious clergy, and this is something I heard from my teachers, but I take my responsibility for it, that if you have strong Iman, then you will not be depressed. You will not go under any type of depression. And that all you need to do to overcome, mental stress, anguish, grief, is to have a relationship with Allah. And again, I take my full responsibility for saying what I said, yet it must also be said that this is a common motif in many religious circles, and I heard many of my own respected teachers saying this, and I as well, at one phase of my life, said the exact same thing. And I used to say publicly on stage, and I used to give my Aqidah classes, and obviously I'm not a psychologist, but when I would be asked, I would go beyond my realm, which is one of the most common problems of many students of knowledge and ulama, that they go beyond their realm of expertise. And I would comment on something that I should not have commented on. And I want to make it clear, and I want to own up to this mistake, because I want to speak especially to the students of knowledge and imams and ulama. And if you know of others, you can ask them to listen to my lectures on this. And that is to state that the notion of having understood the human mind is absolutely incorrect. We are still discovering, as we speak, the intricacies, the profundity of consciousness and of the human mind. There is no simplistic understanding of all problems are this or all problems are that. It is a multifaceted, multidisciplinary enterprise, and therefore one cannot categorically state that all mental anguish is an Iman-based issue, nor can one state that nothing that mental anguish has nothing to do with Iman. Sometimes Iman plays a role, sometimes it doesn't. It's as simple as that. And there's no easy way. No scholar, no psychiatrist can definitively pigeonhole somebody. Sometimes it is multifaceted. What one can say, insha'Allah ta'ala, with a level of confidence is the following. Generally speaking, having good family, good friends, good faith is a helping mechanism. That's the max that can be said. Sometimes you can have all the helping mechanisms and still fall through the cracks. It's not a guarantee. Just because you have Iman or a good family or good friends, you might still be struggling with something that is maybe hormonal, maybe a mental imbalance, maybe something that is beyond your control. What can be said with, insha'Allah, some definitive authority is overall, having religion is much better than not having it. It's not a guarantee, but it helps. And it helps in many people and not all people. And religion, of course, helps in many ways. Obviously, I don't have time for a lecture, but just 2 or 3 points. For example, number 1, belief in qadar. Belief in qadar. Imagine if a Muslim truly believed in qadar. Believe that whatever happens is the qadar of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Is content with the decree of Allah. The way that they're going to view the world and the problems that happen to them will be radically different than the one who does not believe in qadr, right? Number 2, the sweetness of Iman. Having a pain, a problem, a suffering, and not being able to find the sweetness is going to make that pain 10 times worse. But imagine if a person, did find a sweetness that is very powerful, and all things put aside, obviously, the sweetness of Iman is the strongest sweetness. Imagine having a relationship with Allah, the dhikr, the Quran, sajda, tilawa. Generally speaking, if you have that relationship with Allah, it is a very positive factor. It's never going to be negative, that's for sure. But, and this is the key point, just because you have Iman doesn't mean you will never have depression. Sometimes you're struggling for causes beyond what you can control. Sometimes it is a genuine problem that you need help or medication that is beyond what a scholar can give. So the bottom response is that it is a complicated issue, and when you're going through these issues, then seek help from those whom you love and you trust, from family, from licensed therapists. They can do what scholars cannot do. And also go to a respected scholar who maybe can give you some spiritual advice that, can help you in your... So get help from whenever you can. And insha'Allah, in that process, the people that you're going to will be able to guide you, and you'll be able to also see where that help is coming into effect. Sometimes some spirituality will give you more benefit than going to a therapist, and sometimes going to a licensed or a counsel, a therapist is going to help you more than going to a sheikh or scholar. Go to both of the specialities, and insha'Allah ta'ala, obviously always make dua to Allah and help. And if you are, by the way, approached by somebody, like we just heard Ustad Nir and others say, then be the helping hand. Insha'Allah ta'ala, together as a community, we can do our best to minimize. You can never prevent, we can minimize and fill in the gaps, and may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make it easier for all of us.
Ameen. Jazakumullah khairan, Shaykh. Shaykh Abu Eesa Namatullah, there's a term that is floating around, some people refer to it as social media depression. People who are consistently, and we know many young people today are through Instagram, Facebook, Twitter and such, seeing images of people who live these lavish, luxurious lifestyles, people who are, because through social media you really only see the good moments. People report feeling down after they go on social media, or consistently being involved in social media makes them feel less content with maybe what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given them. Can you comment on that? Is that something you've come across?
That's a very specific question. If you want a very specific answer to that, then actually that's recognized in the books of fiqh as well.
Really?
Yeah, there's always been a discussion amongst the fuqaha about the desirability of showing one's fadl, or one's wealth, or one's favor of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that someone's been blessed with, and displaying that. Because you have this dichotomy. You are meant to, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is beautiful, He loves beauty, and this is a hadith which people misunderstand. There are people who flaunt and want to show off, and there are others that don't want to do that, and are maybe well off, and they have very good tailors, and they have very good, they have a good job, and they have good cars. But they're completely unaware of the negative impact it's having on people who are either A, envying them, or B, they are being put into a completely, not because of their fault, but depressive states, because they can't reach that, they can't achieve that, they believe that it's a loss. I remember when I was a lot younger, and the Tabligh Jamaat, you know, Jamaat Tabligh, TJs, yeah? They used to, I mean, I still love them, but I used to love them a lot more, yani, when I had more time to be able to go out with them. And they used to, when they would go around their masjids, I never ever forgot as a youngster, one of the things that they would say. They would say that don't leave your belongings in the car and help your brother. Help your brother. And they meant that brother in humanity, Muslim, non-Muslim, i.e. don't put the temptation there to help them to steal something. Yani it could be a normal person just walking past, sees an easy opportunity and just tempts them that bit too far. This idea that we take some kind of responsibility for other people's states is not a legal discussion, it's a holistic one. And so therefore, I do believe that Muslims have a holistic responsibility, a very difficult one to balance, because on one point, there's entertainment which is halal. Maybe you want to promote yani, that you're going on a holiday. Maybe you want to show people how a halal entertainment looks like, whatever. But at the same time, you've got to be aware what that will make many people feel like, especially when we know that social media is about a few people that grab the headlines, that make it look like yani, that this is exactly how the world lives, when 99.999% of the time people don't look like that, don't stand like that, don't hold the camera like that, don't look like this. The way that they shoot up, you know, their house or their car, whatever, it's a rental car, it's an Airbnb house, they're just blagging everyone, right? They're winging it and they're trying to create it. So there is a lot more to this than, and I absolutely recognize this. As someone who has an interest in psychotropic medication as a speciality, there are now people that are needing to actually go onto psychotropic medications in order to actually deal with real clinical depression, not just symptoms, as a result of not being able to achieve. So it is actually a lot more serious than we may think. So I don't want to be saying it's haram for you to show your fun and your happiness on your Facebook feed so that other people are going to fall into depression. But I do believe, like the scholars said, the fuqaha from min bab yani, from the kind of like the more, like I said, a more complete, holistic Islamic approach, not a legal one, not halal haram one, that we should be careful about what other people perceive from us, even though it's not our fault, technically, if other people fall into conditions.
Very good answer. Jazakumullah khairan, Shaykh. We're going to just quickly do one more round, inshallah, and then we'll close off. Shaykh Navaid, I think Abu Eesa brought up a really interesting point, especially around maintaining positive mental health. Oftentimes we're reactionary when it comes to mental health. We talk about, you know, what do we do if someone's in this state? But what should we do to keep ourselves in a positive state? Are there any remedies? Are there any solutions? Are there any examples from the Sunnah that we can implement in our own lives to keep ourselves in a healthy state of mind and in a healthy mental state?
Excellent. Very good question, Puna. Jazakallah khair. You know, three things that I can think of off the top of my head. Number one is that if you've ever seen someone go to Alcoholics Anonymous, and they show it on TV quite a bit, there's a prayer that they make. They say, oh God, grant me the courage to change the things that I can, the serenity to accept the things that I cannot, and the wisdom to know the difference. And there's a reason why they start off with these prayers, to recognize that there's a greater being that can help them. For a Muslim, this is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this is such a powerful thing for believers, that they have a Lord that can help them in any situation. So as Shaykh Yasir was mentioning, our iman, our faith, our aqidah definitely does play a huge role in this. So if when you know and believe that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is on your side, مَا وَدَّعَكَ رَبُّكَ وَمَا قَلَى, that your Lord has not abandoned you, nor does He detest you, this is perhaps one of the greatest blessings that believers have over non-believers. The fact that they know that their Lord is with them at all times. And there is a Lord that is willing to help them at all times and will help them at all times as long as they continue to ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for that help. Now related to this very point, and that is point number 2, we find in the Quran a beautiful example of Yaqub alayhi salam, where he says, Ashku bathi wa huzni ila Allah wa a'lamu min Allahi ma la ta'lamun. That I complain of my grief and sorrow to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and I know of Allah that which you do not know. We talked about the second part of the ayah in point number 1. The first part of the ayah is talking to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala about our problems. A lot of us, we need people to vent to. Now, when we vent to people, think about, is it really practical? At the end of the day, they may not be able to do much, and we just make ourselves feel good about it. Imagine you're able to vent to someone that can actually change your situation. And this is what we learn about making dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You complain of your weakness. You tell Allah of your weakness. You tell Allah of your hardship. And this is one of the essences of dua, that you're talking to Allah about your problems and asking for His help, recognizing your own weakness, recognizing His strength, recognizing your inability, and recognizing that He is capable of all things. And the third and last thing, you'll notice that there's huge emphasis on meditation in our day and age. Take some time to meditate. For the believer, this is salah. 5 times a day, you're commanded to completely disengage from this world and engage with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, engage with the life of the hereafter, spiritually rejuvenate yourself. That meditation is found in the salah. And this is one of the mental health practices that is advocated for in this day and age. We have that in salah if only we took it more seriously. So those are theory of the practices. Keep remembering your aqeedah and the positive thoughts about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Continue to make dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and never give up on that. And seek help and strength in your prayer. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make things easy. Wallahu alam.
Wallahu alam. Jazakumullah khairan, Shaykh. Thank you very much. We'll go to Dr. Noor, inshallah. If there is someone who perhaps is in this room or is not in this room right now, who themselves might be dealing with a mental health crisis or issue, or they have a friend or a family member that is dealing with a mental health issue, I know from firsthand experience that sometimes therapists can be outside the realm of affordability for many families. You know, to pay $100 an hour or whatever, it might not be feasible for some families or communities. What remedies can you offer? Any advice for people that do want to seek professional help but may not be in the position to do so?
That's a good question. Is this on? That's a good question. May Allah grant all those with any sickness or illness shifa. The Muslim Medical Association of Canada has put together some resources that people can directly access on our website. I'm sure we'll have the link up at some point where you can get access to coverage to meet with mental health care professionals covered through OHIP. We also have a list of Muslim psychiatrists who may be able to understand and provide care within the context of Islam. And we also have Muslim counselors who are also available at lower fees. And there are also organizations in the community that help subsidize some of these costs. So please don't let, I would say, please don't let costs be a barrier. Please get your foot in the door. There are resources and things to reach out for, inshallah.
Very good. And actually, we have the website. I'm sure most of you can see it on the screen behind you. Please do take that information down. Take a picture of it or type it down yourself. I think we'll just leave it up for another 10 or 15 seconds. But don't let that go by without taking note of it. I think that's a really great resource we should all have access to. I want to ask Shaykh Yasir Qadhi about another issue which oftentimes gets tied into this dilemma. When we start talking about mental health, you know, somehow jinn are going to show up. Somehow people have this ambition of connecting, you know, jinn or demonic spirits to someone who might be dealing with a serious medical crisis. In fact, sometimes we'd rather believe we are possessed by jinn than believe we are maybe clinically depressed. What are your thoughts on that?
Bismillah. So the topic of mental health and jinns are obviously, once again, very multifaceted. Time is limited. I've given 2 lectures online about the reality of jinn. There's a lot of misconceptions in our community. And what I've discovered, and I'm not an expert raqi, but I've done enough ruqya and I've trained and studied and practiced enough to dabble in the field. And by the way, I don't do it anymore. So if anybody has issues, don't come to me. You can go to Abu Eesa or somebody. I have enough to do on my plate with this regard. But my point is that I've dabbled enough to know that the vast majority of times people think that there's some type of force or demonic possession or jinn. It's actually a figment of their imagination, okay? Culturally speaking, all Muslim cultures love to blame, and this isn't a Desi thing, it's an Arab, it's an Afghani, it's every culture out there. Anything happens, nazar lag gayi. Anything happens, kisi ne jadoo kiya. You know, it's just like the default, you know? Like your food didn't come out good and you blame a jinn. No, maybe you just didn't add the salt you needed to add, you know? Your business is failing, you blame a jinn. Maybe you didn't add the salt in the food that you're selling for the business. So my point is, instead of blaming something external, supernatural. My own humble experience in this field, the vast majority of times, there's nothing to do with anything that's metaphysical. Okay, it's meaning, by here I mean demonic or jinn. Sometimes there could be obviously a mental issue or something that is genuinely, a problem, but not from the spiritual or from the metaphysical side. Yes, once in a blue moon, and by the way, Muslims aren't the only religion that believe in this. You should all be aware that Catholics, for example, they actually have a type of priest that that trains, the Vatican approves. It's very rare, but there is a department in the Vatican, and I'm not joking about this, where specific priests are trained in the art of possession and demonic, expulsion and whatnot, and they are licensed. Now, according to Catholic law, and I wish we Muslims did the same, by the way, we should do the exact same thing. You do not get to that priest until you have seen a number of psychiatrists and they all say, we don't understand what's going on, right? You can't get to that person without having gone through the proper channels, okay? The majority of times, the vast majority of times, it's nothing to do with the other world. It's to do with our own world, our own issues. And we just want to find an easy way out and find a blame here and there. Yes, it is true, and I've dealt with some cases, and my online lectures will give you some more. Very rarely, there's things involved that truly are from the other world. And in that case, yes, we need to bring in an expert raqi, an expert person who does these things. And of course, that has its methodology and procedure. However, here's a simple point. Regardless of what is going on, whether it is this or that, we believe as Muslims that the Quran has a spiritual healing power. Allah says in the Quran, وَنُنَزِّلُ مِنَ الْقُرْآنِ مَا هُوَ شِفَاءٌ وَرَحْمَةٌ, that we believe, revealed in the Quran, that was a shifa and a rahmah for people. So the Quran is a shifa, it is a heal from the physical and the spiritual. So you don't lose anything and you gain a lot by simply reciting the Quran in the presence of the person who is physically or mentally sick. By the way, this is also physical. If you have a headache, recite Ayatul Kursi on yourself, no problem. If you have a fever, recite Ayatul Kursi and Fatiha on yourself. This is just spiritual barakah. It's not going to substitute the Tylenol. You take the Tylenol as well, right? But reading the Quran will give you some barakah. And we believe this as Muslims. So no matter what is happening, then it's always beneficial to read the Quran for the spiritual blessings that come. But the spiritual blessings do not substitute for the physical procedure and the mechanisms that need to take place. So the bottom line, rarely, very rarely, is it something that is metaphysical. The vast majority of times, what we consider to be a mental illness or whatnot is something that is diagnosable, treatable. You give medicine for it, or you give therapy or counseling. You don't need to go to the world of the jinn and whatnot. Very rarely, when you do, then find a qualified person after you have exhausted the physical manners and gone through the therapist, and they've all said this is atypical, bizarre, we've never seen anything like it. Then you may go beyond this, and you don't lose anything by reading Quran from the beginning all the way to the end, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best.
Jazakumullah khairan, Shaykh Yasir. We'll end off with Shaykh Abu Yusuf Rahmatullah. One final question for you, Shaykh. Why are you looking at me like that? You still with us, right? Don't worry, Shaykh. I control the time, inshallah. They don't control the time, inshallah. Don't worry. We are going to get to Shaykh Yasir's lecture. Don't worry, inshallah. We are going to finish before Maghrib. But final question, and I want to end this kind of tying it into the point I mentioned in the beginning. There are circumstances whereby someone who might be dealing with some type of mental health issue either harms themselves or harms others. There have been circumstances where people have harmed themselves, and we know that ultimately sometimes we do hear of issues of suicide. There are some people who are not really sure what is the state of this type of person, a person who is in this type of mental state, and they end up committing the ultimate act of either harming themselves or others. I don't know if it's a correct thing to ask, but what really is their position with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? How would Allah Azza wa Jalla judge that person?
Yeah, that's a very difficult question, especially in only 1 minute left, and we are over time. And as much as I'd love to cut Shaykh Yasir's lecture, and don't tempt me like that, but I do. I will say that when it comes to the issues of the end of a person, the decision of Allah with respect to someone, it's difficult enough without incredible complications like suicide or murdering others and so on. It's incredibly difficult. And at the same time, we don't want to be, going with the whole liberal kind of flow of this kind of humanist approach where you can't judge anyone and you can't judge me and you can't say about that. Actually, it's the exact opposite. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent insan to judge from the obvious and outward actions, and it's the responsibility of scholars to put those rulings. And there are legal realities, such as the prayer that's being made over them, such as the level of the act that's being done, such as whether the person was in the right state of mind or not. I mean, our literature has a huge resource on whether divorce is enacted when a person has shouted and got so angry that they are considered to have lost their mind. And that's just in divorce. What then do you think about killing someone and someone who's actually proven to have mental issues? So it is best that we refrain from judgment and gossip at the level of the masses, but you should know that the scholars have a difficult decision to make, and you should not judge your scholars and their decisions. If they say that we are not praying over them, or we are praying, or someone else is going to pray, or I need to not give this person the limelight, and I can't pray because the media will say X, Y, Z. You need to respect that this is a very sensitive and difficult situation, especially in non-Muslim countries, as well as the Islamic issue as well, and Allah knows best.
Jazakumullah khair, and thank you very much to all of our panelists. Give them a big round of applause, everyone who participated today. Walhamdulillah.